How many people watching this was a huge fan of the Walking Dead franchise, the Life is Strange franchise? There is a lot of different avenues that we had opportunities with in the past that was kind of a point and click feature that really gravitated and grabbed our attention. Got a game for you guys today. It's called As Dusk Falls for the Xbox Series X. I reviewed it on that platform. But before we get on with the review, if you guys enjoy podcasts, definitely subscribe to the channel. We do a podcast every Sunday, the Iron Lords podcast, and I do my own podcast every Wednesday on this channel called The Addict Show. And without any further ado, here is my review on As Dusk Falls for the Xbox Series X. What's going on, you guys? Lord Addict coming at you for another review. Today we're going to be reviewing As Dusk Falls for the Xbox Series X. Developed by Interior Night and published by Xbox Game Studios. First off, let's give a little bit in depth on what type of game this is. This game is pretty much like the Life is Strange, you know, the Walking Dead. It has that point and click kind of feature that involves the story depending on the choices that you make during your playthrough, and it can evolve from whatever type of playthrough you do. For instance, you can really try to elevate one character over another just depending on what kind of player you are and the choices you make during the game. First thing let's talk about is the artwork in this game in general. I will admit, when I first started this, I wasn't a big fan of the artwork that they have chosen for As Dusk Falls. It's kind of like a comic book where you turn the page. It gives like slight adjustments to the artwork, but it isn't a full-blown motion. It's always like, you know, turning the page and they'll slightly turn their head left, or, you know, the grass will constantly be going back and forth. But what I will admit in this game is after you play a couple chapters, or maybe even just a chapter, for me it was about 2 chapters, you kind of end up seeing the game where I think the developers wanted you to see it, where at first you see these little motions that the characters and the backgrounds make, but then eventually after you play a little bit of the game, you start seeing it in your mind the way that an actual movie would be playing. And I think that's the way they originally designed like comic books and stuff, where, you know, they give you this inspiration that's on these papers or on the game or on the screen, and you start to slowly subconsciously see what you're reading on the actual screen happening in your head. And I have to give them props for that, because I'm a very critical person when it comes to artwork and how I want things done, and I was completely against the way this game showed itself at first, but I will admit it did grow on me. It grew on me pretty good, and by the end of the game I was very pleased by the artwork of this game. Like I said, it's not for everyone. I'm not going to say that you got to play 5-6 hours of the game to really see the artwork come to life, but I will say, you know, try the first chapter. I feel like if you guys are on here and you at least try that first chapter, you'll be more willing. Now let's talk about the gameplay as Dusk Falls. Now I will mention to you the gameplay in this game is the point and click thing that you would get from the Life is Strange and you would get from the Walking Dead franchise, but there is some caveats that they put into this that make a lot of sense. You guys know that I don't really go into story a whole lot, so I want to warn you, the background's not going to have a whole lot of aspects of the game in terms of story. I might put some, you know, stuff that happened at the beginning, but I don't want to really ruin the story for you guys. But when it comes to the gameplay and the story, they kind of go hand to hand. The story has a lot of aspects that the gameplay takes advantage of that is unique to just this game that you don't really see in other franchises. For instance, when you're going through certain aspects of this game, there will be key components of the story where you cannot negotiate with people. It is either everyone is the majority vote, or you have to use these things called overrides, where it's pretty much saying that I don't care what this person over here said, I don't care what this person over there says, I want this story to go the way I want it to go.
Anytime.
Can I stay with you? It's not a good idea.
I'll talk to Michelle.
I kind of want to just shut him down. You're overriding.
You always take it up with your wife.
So you use an override. What's an override, Addict? An override is something that 1 to 8 players can use in As Dusk Falls. And when I say 8, I mean 8 of your friends or 7 of your friends can play this game simultaneously with you. And there's a broadcast mode to where if you're a streamer and you guys really want to find good streaming games, because I think, we don't have a whole lot of games that appeal to an audience of a streamer. But this is a game that really helps do that. Now, I will admit, I didn't get to play it myself. I don't know if it was active at the time, but I do know that for the most part, the way it was wording it to me was, when you're playing this, your audience has a vote on what's going on in the game. And I think that's relatively a cool thing. Back to the overrides. What I like about the overrides is it causes a little bit of friction between the players that you're playing this with. Now, if it's not those key components at the very end of the chapters, they're not at the very end of the chapters. There are a couple sprinkled through the chapters, but if it's not those specific choices, there's a lot of time-sensitive choices. And you've seen that in Life is Strange and The Walking Dead, where the developer doesn't really want to give you time to really look at these options and see which one's gonna fit for you. So what do? They give you maybe 5 to 10 seconds to really choose what you want, sometimes even less than that. For the most part, the majority of the game does have that time structure one, but when you get to these key moments where they're forcing you to argue with your person that you're playing this game with, or with multiple people, and then let's say that you don't agree with them, you use that override, you get what you want anyway, but you only got a certain amount of those overrides. And keep in mind, the other players can use their overrides to override your override. Is it worth sitting down and talking?
Wait, what? Kiss?
I feel like we're not getting, like...
Sit and talk.
But where is the... Get out of my... Oh, leave right there. There's the one I want.
No, because they're supposed to be...
No! So sometimes maybe it's not the best thing to fight for your actual one, because you'll end up getting to a situation where you can't override theirs later because you spent all of yours overriding yours at the beginning. And I had that happen to me a couple times where I would want to override the people I'm playing it with, but it's not necessarily the best interest in me because I need some of those overrides for later on in the chapter. And I honestly do feel like that is one of the biggest perspectives of As Dusk Falls that makes it unique compared to games like The Walking Dead and Life is Strange. There's a few other ones, but those are the biggest ones to me. And I do think that that's one of the key aspects that make this game fun. Like I said, I didn't play the broadcast mode, but the way it was described, I feel like that's going to really resonate with a lot of, especially Twitch streamers. It did look like it was only Twitch streamers. YouTube needs to get on that. They need to make sure more of those kind of features come to their platform. But for the most part, there was only one real big thing I didn't like about this game, and that was the UI, the menus. I felt like some of them was redundant. Like they would always ask you, press the X if you don't want to see this pop up again. And I get that. That is a good option to have, but they would literally have you go to where you would start it, you would do a co-op session, then you would have to click online, and then you have to invite. And every time you start this, no matter what chapter you're on, you would have to go through the tutorial pretty much of, just like A. Sure, it wasn't that much. You just pushed A bunch of times and you would start it. But after playing this 3 or 4 hours and doing this like the 3rd or 4th time of a playthrough, sitting down on a playthrough, those little things was getting on my nerves, especially when, didn't happen a lot, maybe once, where something would happen and there would be a disconnect with my partner. I would have to go through that process again to send out invites to start that game again. And I think, if the developers are watching this, go in there and make sure that, you can go somewhere else to watch that, where you don't have to constantly remind players. Like I said, sure, you give them the option to disable it, which I think for the most part, a lot of you are going to look past this fact. But like I said, even to just initiate a multiplayer session, you have to go to a multiplayer session. Then you have to click the profile that you want. Then when you get on the actual screen that you would say, yo, I can send out invites, you have to go over there and scroll and click online. Like, I just think it's a lot of extra steps for no reason. And I think that's the only road knick-knack I have for this game. As Dusk Falls is a good game. They do have a feature with tablets on here where if you don't have a controller and you want to get those 8 people, everyone's got tablets. Maybe not everyone's got a console, but a lot of people have a smartphone, have a tablet, have something that they can download on the Apple Store, download on the Google Store, and they do have an app on there. Now, it wasn't available during this review process. It might be available while I'm recording this review, but it wasn't available during the initial reviewing process. And I have a little nick to point out that if like you're gonna give features that you want me to speak of on a review, kind of make sure that they work. But that's neither here or there. Definitely go and download that, because I think it would be a lot more easier to do that than everyone have a controller. These controllers are expensive, you know, and if you have a phone where you can easily access the game where you can play up to 8 people, I think that's a lot more accessible than everyone having a controller. But you know what, that's the review on As Dusk Falls. Like I said, game's got a unique art style that I grew to love towards the middle to the end of the game. It's got a fantastic story that has branching past. There was some endings that I saw had 3 or 4 endings to that chapter, not to mention when you keep going further and further in the story, those possibilities just continue to increase. And it's got actually really good functionality when it comes to multiplayer. You can play with your friends, and I do think this game's got a lot of replay value. But that's pretty much my review on As Dusk Falls. I played it on the Xbox Series X. I do think it's worth your money. Like I said, it's in Game Pass, so definitely go download it if you want to try it in that. And until next time, this is Lord Addict, and that was my review, and this game definitely gets an Iron Lord stamp. Peace.